Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Buyer Brown from BuyerBrownTechandStuff.wordpress.com. Thank you for joining me on this lesson about IP address. We're going to do a brief overview of what IP addresses are. We're going to talk about what are the different kinds of IP addresses we encounter, where does an IP address come from, what does it mean to have an IP address, and of course how to troubleshoot an IP address. So, IP stands for Internet Protocol. An IP or Internet Protocol version 4 address is a unique 32-bit series of numbers assigned to any computer or device on an IP based network. Similar to a street address or email address, each IP address on a network is unique. Two computers on the same network cannot share the same IP address. IP addresses uses a dotted decimal notation to divide a 32-bit IP address into four 8-bit or 1-bit fields. These fields can hold a number from 0 to 255, and each group of numbers are known as an octet. And I have a nice example of IP address version 4. Now, the reason I keep saying version 4 is because there is a version 6 that exists that will be used very soon, as version 4 IP addresses are actually starting to run out. Now, to put it simply, an IP address is a series of four numbers separated by a decimal point, such as 192.168.0.1. The first set of numbers in an IP address are the most useful for high-speed internet troubleshooting. And you can encounter different types of IP address. You can get an IP address from your ISP or internet service provider, such as Comcast. You can get an IP address from your router, as well as getting an IP address from the computer itself, which is called a 169 IP address. Now, if you have a 169 IP address, you can think of that as being sort of a troubleshooting IP address, because you know that there's definitely something wrong if the computer has assigned itself a 169 IP address. You will receive a Comcast IP address when connecting directly to their modem, or directly through a hub or a switch to a cable modem, but not through a router, being that a router has its own table of IP addresses to hand out, but we'll talk about that later. Comcast IP addresses will begin with any of the following numbers: 24, 67, 71, 76, and 98. What I have here is a good example of a Comcast IP address, the X representing possible number combinations that could be there. A router IP address. You will receive a router IP address when connecting through a router or a gateway. Router IP addresses will always start with the number 192, such as 192.168.1.100 is a good example of a router IP address, but it is important to note that some modems will give you a 192 address. And here is a good troubleshooting tip. If you are ever at home and you know that your computer is connected directly to your cable modem and it's bringing up a 192, well, then that means that you are most likely in standby. Look on your modem, look for a standby button, click it, and more likely you'll be right back online. A 169 IP address. You will receive a 169 IP address if your computer doesn't make a good connection to the modem or a router. A 169 IP address means that there's a problem when trying to connect to the internet. Here's a good example right here of a 169 IP address. Remember, as I said, a 169 IP address is a troubleshooting IP address because it means that something is wrong. If the computer assigns itself an IP address, something has gone awry. Other IP addresses. Well, these IP addresses will sometimes come from a static configuration. They will also come from equipment that is not from your ISP, such as Comcast, or is not functioning or set up properly. It might at times be possible to connect with some of these IP addresses, but it's not within the scope of these lessons. I have a good example of a possible IP address that you may receive starting with a 10. Now, there are different reasons to why you would get an IP address starting with 10 dots, so on and so forth. One place that I have noticed them at is if you're running a virtual computer and look at the IP address from the virtual computer, it usually comes up as 10. Where do IP addresses come from? Most IP addresses generally come from the next piece of equipment it's connected to. A computer connected directly to a cable modem will receive a Comcast or an ISP IP address from that modem. A computer that is connected to a router will receive a router IP address from the router. A router will receive a Comcast IP address from the cable modem it's connected through. A 169 IP address are self-assigned by the computer when the computer cannot get a valid router or IP address from Comcast or your internet service provider. Here goes a good picture here representing the different modems. Now this one here is known as an EMTA, and this one is just a regular modem. Now no matter which one you use, you're going to use an Ethernet cord to connect to a computer or a router. This picture shows an Ethernet connection between modem and computer. So that means the computer will receive an IP address from the modem. This is a nice picture of the modem, of course, and it's passing off a proper IP address to a router. Now the router is then going to pass off proper IP addresses to whatever is connected to it. Here's a good example of a 169, or one of the reasons why there is a 169. As you see, there's no connection, and the computer is saying, I don't see anything connected to me, so I will assign myself an IP address. And there's a problem here if it has to assign itself an IP address. You can think of, if the internet was the movie or a movie, then an IP address would be the ticket you need to see that movie. Where do IP addresses come from? If a computer or a device has an IP address, it has to have gotten it from somewhere unless it has a 169 IP address. A computer cannot just assign itself a Comcast IP address or internet service provider IP address. You have situation that you can run into or you have a difference between a static IP address and a dynamic IP address. Now, a static IP address is an IP address that never changes. You have here static IP. Device will always look for the same IP address. For example, setting a computer to a static IP address of 192.168.0.1 will tell the computer to look for that address regardless of what it's attached to. You sometimes run into this if you have a home network that's going to have static IP addresses, or you may run into this where you may have a laptop that goes to a certain company and there's a static IP address attached to that laptop used in the company. Dynamic IP address. Setting a device to DHCP will tell it to take whatever IP address is given. Now Comcast uses DHCP in order to have everything work properly with the connection. All devices on the network need to be set to a DHCP. What does it mean to have an IP address? When a device has the correct IP address, it usually is a sign that it is physically communicating with the attached modem or router. And as you can see in this diagram here, the modems, and they are connected, and it says, hey, I can see the modem. All is well. A computer without an IP address or with an invalid IP address is not properly communicating with the attached modem or router. And now we're going to go over in the near future here about troubleshooting with an IP address. We're going to talk about how to find an IP address, how to release and renew an IP address, talk a little bit more about the 169 IP address, and things to try if you are coming up with the wrong IP address. As you can see here, we're going to talk about command line with Windows XP, Windows Vista, you got Windows 7 here. We're going to talk about finding the IP address with the command line and some other things that you can do with the command line as well as graphically, again, with the different operating systems. We are going to look into how to find your IP address and how to do just different things with your IP address, command line, as well as graphically. I want to thank you for joining me in this lesson of IP address. Remember that you can see more material like this at www.byronbrowntechandstuff.wordpress.com. Feel free to jump on over there and check it out. And if you also know somebody that needs help with maybe getting their virus protection, if coming from Comcast or something like that. I have a great video on that, plus some other videos that you may find useful. Well, that's going to be it for me. Thank you very much for joining me on this lesson. This is Byron Brown. May you have a good night, and may God bless. Bye-bye.